Good, he replied. Do so, although hanging is somewhat hackneyed. Perhaps you might do better. Take a dose of Brandreth's pills and then give us your sensations. However, my instructions will aptly apply equally well to any variety of your misadventure. And in your way home, you may easily get knocked in the head or run over by an omnibus or bitten by a mad dog or drown in a gutter. But to proceed, having determined upon your subject, you might next consider the tone or matter of your narration. There is the tone didactic, the tone enthusiastic, the tone natural, all commonplace enough. But then there's the tone laconic, or curt, which has lately come much into use. It consists in short sentences and somehow thus can't be too brief, can't be too snappish, always a full stop, and never a paragraph. Then there's a tone elevated, diffusive, and interjectional. Some of our best novelists patronize this tone. The words must be all in a whirl, like a humming top, and make a noise very similar, which answers remarkably well instead of meaning. This is the best of all possible styles where the writer is in too great a hurry to think. The tone metaphysical is also a good one. If you know any big words, this is your chance to use them for them. But talk of the Ionic and of Elatic schools of Archytas, Gorgias, and Alcmaeon. Say something about objectivity and subjectivity, and be sure and abuse a man named Locke. Turn up your nose at things in general, and when you let slip anything a little too absurd, you need not be at the trouble of scratching it out, but just add a footnote or say that you are indebted for the above profound observation to the Critique der Reinum Vernunft, or to the Metaphysique. Anfangsgrund der Naturwissenschaft. This will look erudite and frank. There are various other tones of equal celebrity, but I shall mention only two more. The tone transcendental and the tone heterogeneous. In the former, the merit consists in seeing the nature of affairs a very great deal farther than anybody else. This second sight is a very efficient when properly used to manage. A little reading the dial will carry you a great way. Eschew in this case. Big words, get them as small as possible and write them upside down. Look over Channing's poems and quote what he says about a little fat man with a delusive show of can. Put in something about the supernal oneness. Don't say a syllable about the infernal two-ness. Above all, study innuendo. Hint everything, assert nothing. If you feel inclined to say bread and butter, do not by any means say it outright. You may say anything and everything approaching to bread and butter. You may hint at buckwheat cake. Or you may even go so to bread and butter. You may hint at what buckwheat cake, or you may even go so far as to insinuate oatmeal porridge. But if bread and butter be your real meaning, be cautious, my dear Miss Psyche, not on any account to say bread and butter. I assured him that I should never say it again as long as I lived. He kissed me and continued, "As for the tones heterogeneous, it is merely a judicious mixture in equal proportions of all the great other tones of the world. And it is consequently made up of everything deep, great, odd, piquant, pertinent, and pretty. Let us suppose now that you have determined upon our incidence and tone, the most important portion, in fact, is the soul of the whole business, is yet to be attended to. I alluded to the filling up. It is not to be supposed that a lady, or gentleman either, has been leading the life of a bookworm, and yet, above all things, it is necessary that your article have an air of erudition, or at least afford evidence of extensive general reading. Now, I'll put you in the way of accomplishing this point. See here," pulling some 3 or 4 ordinary-looking volumes and opening them at random. By casting your eye down almost on any page of any book in the world, you may be able to receive at once a host of little scraps of either learning or bellispiritism. Or is it bel-espertism? Which are the very thing for the spicing of a Blackwood article. You may as well note down a few while I read them to you. I shall make 2 divisions. First, piquant facts for the manufacture of similes, and second, piquant expressions to be introduced on occasion, as occasion may require. Right now. And I wrote as he dictated. Piquant facts for similes. There were originally but 3 muses. Melite, Nemine, Acedia, meditation, memory, and singing. You may make a good deal of that little fact if properly worked. You see, it is not generally known and looks recherché. You may be careful and give the thing with a downright improviso air. Again, the river Alpheus passed beneath the sea and emerged without an injury to the purity of its waters. Rather stale that, to be sure, but if properly dressed and dished up, will look quite as fresh as ever. Here's something better. The Persian iris appears to some persons to possess a sweet and very powerful perfume, while to others it is perfectly scentless. Fine that, and very delicate. Turn it about a little, and it will do wonders. Well, something else in this botanical line. There's nothing goes down so well, especially with the help of a little Latin rite. The Epidendrum flos aerius of Java bears a very beautiful flower and will live when pulled up by its roots. The natives suspend it by a cord from the ceiling and enjoy its fragrance for years. That's capital. That will do for the similes. Now for the piquant expressions. Piquant expressions. The venerable Chinese novel Fu Kai Li. Good. By introducing these few words with dexterity, you will evince your intimate acquaintance with the language and literature of the Chinese. With the aid of this, you may possibly get along without either Arabic or Sanskrit or Chickasaw. There's no passing muster, however, without Spanish, Italian, German, Latin, and Greek. I must look you out a little specimen of each. Any scrap will answer, because you must depend upon your own ingenuity to make it fit in your article. Now write. Alci tendere qui zere. As tender as zere, French. Alludes to the frequent repetition of the phrase la tendre zere in the French tragedy of that name. Properly introduced will show not only your knowledge of the language, but your general reading and wit. You can say, for instance, that the chicken you were eating, write an article about being choked to death by a chicken bone, was not altogether alci tendre qui zere. Right. Van muerte tan escondida, que no te siente. Venir, porque el placer del morir no me storne a dar la vida. That's Spanish from Miguel de Cervantes. Come, O death, but be sure and don't let me see you coming, lest the pleasure I shall feel at your appearance should unfortunately bring me back again to life. This you may slip into quite a propos when you are struggling in the last agonies with the chicken bone. Right. Il pover humus che non sean era accorto andava combattendo e era morto. That's Italian, you perceive. From Ariosto, it means that a great hero, in the heat of combat, not perceiving that he had been fairly killed, continuing to fight valiantly, that as he was. The application of this to your own case is obvious, for I trust, Miss Psyche, that you will not neglect to kick for at least an hour and a half after you've been choked to death by that chicken bone. Please to write. Und sterbeck doch, no sterbeck den Dirtsei. That's German from Schiller. And if I die, at least I die for thee. For thee. Here it is clear that you are apostrophizing the cause of your disaster, the chicken. Indeed, what gentleman or lady either of sense wouldn't die, I should like to know, for a well-fattened capon. Of the right Malacca breed, stuffed with capers and mushrooms and served in a salad bowl with orange jellies on mustique. On mosaics. Right, you can get them that way at Tortini's. Right, if you please. Here is a little Latin phrase. And rare, too. One can't be too rare, Recherche. Recherche, or brief in one's Latin, like it's getting so common. Ignoratio a lynche.